So I was at a LARP recently. That's a live action role-playing game. And before the game started, everybody was doing a bit of a talk, and a guy celebrated, "I love this game. I love this community. It's so good. LARP is my therapy." And people booed. Why would people boo that? That's a good thing, right? Is it? This is what we're going to be talking about today at the Shadowwrite Project. My name is Dr. Keel McFarland. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and here at Shadowwrite Project, we're going to be looking at things like role-playing games and therapy and psychology, and how do these all kind of interact with each other. If that's something that interests you, I encourage you to join us and check out what we do here at the Shadowwrite Project. So I want to start by respecting what this guy was saying. What he was saying was that it was a healing moment for him. Coming to the game, interacting in character, being in relationship with people was a healing thing that he did. And I respect that he was grateful for that. I'm glad that it was healing for him. What I am going to disagree with this guy about was that he called it therapy. And it isn't. It is not therapy, but it is therapeutic. What do I mean by that? Therapy in its basics is it is a thing you go to for help with mental health challenges. And a game like a LARP, a live action game, and sometimes often a tabletop game can be healing emotionally for various reasons. Sometimes it has to do with community. There's human connections. We are social creatures, and these games can absolutely provide that connection where a lot of times you have your adventuring party and they're gonna get each other's backs. They're gonna help each other when one person goes down, another person heals. When the healer is being attacked, the fighter will defend. And that sort of interaction and community a lot of times can feel very, very healing, especially when we're so isolated by digital reasons, or just, we don't live in villages anymore. We live in cities or suburbia, and those connections can help us feel seen and heard in very real ways. A lot of times, especially with live action role-playing games, we're embodying these moments. We're physically acting them out as our characters, and our bodies and our emotions don't know the difference between what is pretend and what is real life. Even if our frontal lobes, our brains know that difference, our bodies don't. And so it can feel like, hey, this is a really cool moment when that person saved me, saved my character. But it feels like it saved you. This has to do with some of the bleed stuff we've been talking about earlier. A different way this can play out sometime is just activity. Getting out of the day-to-day grind of I get up, I take a shower, I go to work, I deal with the annoying customers or the frustrating tech, and then I come home and I go watch my show and go to bed, and it's just the same thing day after day. It gets exhausting. And so doing something on a tabletop or a live action game, it shakes that up, and it reminds us in a unconscious way that, oh, okay, well, what if we did try something different? What if we did go on an adventure? And then when we come back to real life, there is this afterglow of positive feelings or excitement even that pushes out into everyday life, and that it helps us remember that, oh yeah, man, there's fun things in the world. And we kind of chew on that while we're dealing with the annoying customer at the Starbucks or the technology that's just frustrating. That does help. That does feel very therapeutic, and that's a beautiful thing. Different ways that it feels like in a game setting that you're making a difference. And I think about this a lot with the scale of global politics that we all have pumped into our phones, into the screens, whatever media we're consuming. We're aware of what's happening on the other side of the planet. We're aware of people that are being hurt or encountering that for wherever you are politically. You're seeing this chaos on a global scale all the time, and it makes us feel very, very small. Where when we're in a game setting, there is a moment of, I'm helping. I helped change the course of history. And I don't mean this in a dismissive way. That I'm helping in the game setting can help us have a sense of internal agency of, I can do things. I can make a difference. And that does translate over into our everyday real lives in that, okay, maybe that gives you the courage to go and help the person that you see struggling getting their groceries into their car. And I know it doesn't feel like on the same level of like a D&D campaign where you save the world from the evil necromancer lich, but for that person that you helped put their groceries into their car, that can be such a beautiful moment. And there's the ripple effect of the grassroots wherever, if everybody's doing that, then yes, that does have these huge monumental experiences. It helps us also have meaning, where we feel like we're doing things. And again, that does translate into our everyday lives. So in that way, there is therapeutic value. I will say that the embodied natures of live action role plays where you're physically acting things out and it's more immersive environment where people are in costume. Sometimes there's, settings, physical locations. Those do increase the feelings of, oh man, this is very therapeutic, where if you are having a positive interaction with a father figure that is very healing for whatever happened with your in real life father, it feels more embodied when that father character is actually embracing you physically than in a tabletop setting when the dungeon master or the game master is describing it. It makes it feel that much more powerful. Additionally, in live action role-playing games, a lot of times you will go hours or days where there's very few out-of-character breaks. A lot of times in tabletop settings, you'll flip back and forth real quick between in-character, out-of-character, in-character, out-of-character. And so there still are those healing moments, but you spend a lot more time out of character than in a LARP event where it's hours-long stretches where you don't break character. So that will heighten the effect where it feels very, very healing because you're getting more time in character to practice taking risks, to practice being brave, to have those interactions where you feel like you're embodying change and a sense of agency and meaning and purpose. And so it gets into us, and this is where bleed can be very helpful. And so that's why sometimes the LARP community, there will be a strong sense of, yeah, this is therapy. But I agree it is therapeutic in that it can be super healing, but I'm going to hold my ground and say it is not therapy proper. So let's talk about ways that it isn't therapy. So the big reason why it doesn't count as therapy is there's no therapist, and this matters. This matters big time. The biggest reason that this is concerning to me as a therapist is that there are no guardrails for keeping you emotionally safe. One of the big dangers here is re-traumatization. This is an actual thing, and it's what happens when a person tries to engage and heal their traumatic pain or wound that they might have, and instead of healing it, it deepens it. It makes it worse. And so this is why you'll hear a lot of therapists will say very strongly, hey, if you are having trouble with your trauma and processing your trauma, get someone who's trained to help you. Don't just try to muscle through it with your friends, because you could be making it worse. You could be re-traumatizing yourself by reliving that event over and over again. There's no guardrail for that in a LARP game. So if you're finding yourself triggered by an event or something that's going on in there, it might make it worse to just try to muscle through without the help of someone who's trained to help you manage and process and work through that trauma. So that's one of the dangers. Another danger is there's no training in diagnosis. And if there's no diagnosis, how do they know what to do? How do they know what to deal with? How do they know what is the appropriate response for what a person is presenting with? There's no strategy, there's no treatment plan. All of these things are a part of therapy. Now, you as the client, you might not know that a lot of this is going on because this is a lot of the work that the therapist is doing behind the scenes between your therapy sessions. A good therapist knows your diagnosis. They have a plan for how to respond with what it is you're presenting them. It might feel like they're shooting from the hip, but a good therapist between sessions will be thinking about strategically how to respond to the challenges that you're having with research-backed interventions. Even if there just feels like they're chit-chatting, a good therapist has done their homework, had the appropriate training to know when they're going to respond with validating what you're feeling, mirroring and reflecting what you're going through so you feel emotionally heard, or challenging you, pushing back against what you're saying in a way that can help you question your internal narratives in a healing way, rather than just re-traumatizing you or colluding. That means joining with the challenging emotional presentation or the emotional disorder. Good therapists are doing all of this, even if the client is completely unaware of what they're doing. And there's research behind all of this. A LARP, a D&D game, a tabletop game has none of this. There is no evidence-based intervention strategies. There is no treatment plan backed by science to help improve mental health and to avoid harm. Also, if there's no therapist, there's no training in ethics or an ethical mandate to help and not harm. There's no guardrails for safety when there is a power differential between the storyteller and the player. There's no ethical mandate there for that power differential. There is with therapy. We are trained, and it is pounded into us to be respectful, that there is a mantle of responsibility that the therapist carries, because when a therapist says something, people will treat it in a different way than just when a friend says something. So that means we have to make sure ethically that we are research backed, that we do have the appropriate diagnosis and treatment strategy, and all of these things are done with care and are ethically appropriate to what's going on here. LARPs don't have any of that. Tabletop games don't have any of that, because at their core, the biggest difference between therapy and a tabletop or a role-playing game or a LARP game is their purpose. The goal of a LARP or a role-playing game or a tabletop game is to be a game, to play, to have a good time with your friends, and to do something that is for entertainment purposes, for joy. It might have the unintended side effect of being therapeutic simply by nature of how these things are done, but that is not its primary purpose. So to say that LARP is therapy or a role-playing game is therapy, it misses the underlying purpose of what the game is for. So that's why, for me, I will say yeah, it can be therapeutic. I have experienced how therapeutic this sort of game thing can be. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Another way role-playing games can be very therapeutic is that we're projecting ourselves onto our characters, and so it really is a version of us that is going through whatever these experiences are. Our characters will take risks that maybe in real life we would never take those risks, but they can help us push past anxiety, push out of fear, and to do things that we know that in real life, I'm not going to try that because I don't want to die, but if our character gets, beat up, it's fine. So this can be healing because it helps us push out of our normal boundaries and explore, to be creative, to be curious in ways that we're not normally used to doing. And that can be very healing because it helps us rewrite internal narratives about what is and isn't possible. So it's helpful in that those lines that society puts on us or that we put on ourselves become porous, and so we can stretch out, and then that helps us in our regular lives be okay, yeah, man, my heart's going, and there's some anxiety here, but unconsciously we remember my character tried that, so I'm gonna try it, and there's growth. If it seems like I'm passionate about this, it's because I am. Because words matter. They set expectations, and if your expectation is that your game is your therapy, that's setting yourself up for some disappointment and frustration, and maybe even some harm. That doesn't mean, though, that we can't lean into the therapeutic aspects of our games by taking what is healing about it and taking it into our actual therapy sessions with an actual role therapist. It's the best of both worlds. And if your therapist seems confused, like, what do I do with this hobby? Let me help you out. Tell them that they can treat it like play therapy or like dream interpretation. Not saying that it is play therapy, but it's like that, in that you, as you're role-playing, are encountering things in that game that are healing to you, and that's going to help them not learn how to use it in therapy, but learn how to interpret it, much like they would interpret a dream or any other aspect of things where we're projecting a part of ourselves into an encounter. This sort of symbolic play can be really fertile ground for exploring you, the player's unconscious self. If you're a therapist watching this, I encourage you to dig up training on D&D therapy or role-playing game therapy. It absolutely applies to LARPs beyond D&D, and like I've said before, it can be even more dramatically powerful due to the embodied nature of LARPing. You don't have to be running a LARP therapy game or a D&D therapy session to still help your players process what has been symbolically brought to the surface by that role-playing. Processing what your character goes through for you as the player, or helping your clients process what they've gone through, can be incredibly helpful. So it doesn't have to be a hard, there is no therapy in LARPing. It's not therapy, but it's leaning into the benefits, the therapeutic benefits of LARP, but adding the depth of informed processing with a clinician and that safety net of ethics and science-based interventions with the clinician. It really helps you to get the best of both worlds. You can even strategize with your therapist about how you can grow out of character by trying things out and taking risks with your character at your game. There are many stories of people who have explored gender expression or other identities through tabletop role-playing or their LARP characters, and that's just one example of ways that people are able to take risks. There are other stories of people who have overcome crippling introversion and anxiety around social interactions by creating a character that forces them to step out of that little bubble that they've made for themselves and helps them so that they're okay when they are in social situations out of character. It's an incredible opportunity. Just be responsible with it and don't put too much weight onto the game itself to do the work that a therapist is trained to do. Bring them together and you'll get the best of both worlds. Thank you for sticking around, and I hope you see you around for the next one. Please let me know if you got other things that you would like to hear my thoughts on as a therapist who engages in the role-playing game world. Thank you so much. Bye.